What's up, everyone? It's Peter Tragos, the lawyer you know, and today we're going to talk about a rule in my home state of Florida that may end Gabby Petito's parents' lawsuit against Brian Laundrie's parents before it ever starts. It could make it impossible for them to win. So when I did my initial breakdown last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, when this complaint was filed, and we went through this complaint in detail, I had a buddy of mine who is also a lawyer in town. He's a PI lawyer named Dominic who just hit a $4 million verdict, great lawyer, who reached out to me and said, I watched your breakdown, I agreed with everything you said, and I don't know how they're gonna win. He said, I think it'd be beneficial for everyone that watches your videos to talk about Florida's impact rule. And the impact rule sets certain parameters around when you can collect for non-economic damages, meaning not medical bills, not costs, but pain and suffering and mental anguish. Tell them about how the impact rule may impact this case and bar any recovery. So generally speaking, in Florida, the court outlines elements that are required to allege negligent infliction of emotional distress, which is what Gabby Petito's parents are alleging in this case. And whenever there's a list of elements, it's really important to talk about whether or not there's an and versus an or. Do all of these elements have to be in place in order for you to be successful, or just one of these four elements? And in this case, it is an and connecting these elements. Number one, the plaintiff must suffer a physical injury. Number two, the plaintiff's physical injury must be caused by the psychological trauma. Number three, the plaintiff must be involved in some way in the event which caused the negligent injury to another, and the person must have a close personal relationship to the directly injured person. Let's talk about whether or not those elements apply to this case. All right, so if we look at paragraph 32 of the complaint that was filed, it says, as a direct and proximate result of the willfulness and maliciousness of Christopher Laundrie and Roberta Laundrie, Joseph Petito and Nicole Schmidt had been caused to suffer pain and suffering, mental anguish, inconvenience, loss of capacity for enjoyment of life experience in the past and to be experienced in the future. That is prototypical emotional distress, non-economic damages. I don't see a physical injury pled here. And if you're wondering what a physical injury is, it doesn't necessarily have to be broken back, cut off arm, death. It can be hives, it can be ulcers, it can be insomnia, it can be things like that, that emotional distress can manifest itself in a physical manifestation like that. So it can be that, but I don't see that necessarily pled here specifically. They could say that the mental anguish and pain and suffering that they went through did include those physical manifestations, which I think they may need to get around this impact rule. So they don't really hit element one, but let's go back and talk about element two. The plaintiff's physical injury must be caused by the psychological trauma. Again, that would be the ulcer or insomnia, hives, things like that. Number three, the plaintiff must be involved in some way in the event which caused the negligent injury to another. So the way we think about it in law school is a mother cannot sue the driver of a car accident who hits and kills her son if she's not in the car. Okay? So if a drunk driver is driving a car, hits and kills a 16-year-old kid driving the car, his mom cannot sue the drunk driver because of this impact rule. It bars that. She was not there. She did not physically experience this and see this. Now, if she was sitting in the front seat and watched her son die, then yes, she was injured. She can have that emotional trauma. She saw it. She felt it. She was impacted by it. In this case, they were not there with Gabby Petito. They did not see it. They were not physically impacted by it. They did not find her body. They didn't see the murder occur. But a lot of the facts that they allege, that there were facts hidden from them, and they were malicious in what they did and didn't share with them, and that they diverted the police attention, and that they may have helped Brian escape. I guess they were there for some of that so they could try to argue it, but historically speaking, that usually is not enough to get past this impact rule. And then number four, the person must have a close personal relationship to the directly injured person. Of course, they have that here as her parents. But it really seems like they do not hit this impact rule. And in order to help us understand it more, I'm going to talk about a couple cases that have come down in Florida that can help us understand this a little bit more. So there was a case where the court allowed a man to recover damages for the death of his wife who suffered a fatal heart attack after becoming so overwhelmed by the intense emotional devastation of seeing the body of her young daughter who was killed by a drunk driver. The court allowed a claim for negligent infliction of emotional distress to stand and ruled that there is a point at which the price of death or significant physical injury that is caused by psychological trauma causes too great a harm to impose the additional physical contact requirement. Okay, so there didn't have to actually be that physical contact there. Next, there was a case where a woman witnessed the death of her father by an anonymous bomber. The woman witnessed her dad pick up a small box on the family's doorstep and it exploded, killing him. The plaintiff did not suffer any physical injuries herself, but she did begin struggling with insomnia, depression, short-term memory loss, fear, nightmares, and constantly reliving of the event. After 9 months, she suffered an ulcer that led to blockage in her esophagus and left her unable to swallow with breathing difficulty. This was attributed to the earlier trauma, and the court held that despite the delay between the emotional trauma and her physical injuries, the impact rule did not bar her claims. So she actually had those connections with the physical injuries. There have been other cases where a mother heard about an elevator falling on her son and her son was crushed and she did have physical injuries, but she was not close enough there to actually experience what happened to her son. So they had the familial connection. She had physical injuries, the hives, the distress, the ulcers, the insomnia, but she didn't actually have that impact with what happened. So the mother that had the heart attack after seeing the body of her daughter killed by a drunk driver was enough. But the mother just hearing about it, not actually seeing the dead body, was not enough. So it's not a clear black and white bright line rule. There are some gray areas, and there's a lot of public policy against the impact rule in Florida for a case like this where people did bad things, right? So if what the Petitos are saying is true, it's very wrong of the Laundries, and they did cause emotional distress to the Petitos, and they could have done things that made this not so horrible for the Petitos, and the Petitos could be suffering this mental anguish and emotional distress. So maybe we want public policy for the reason to be, this is a bad law, we need to change this law. But as it sits right now in Florida, it seems like the impact rule may bar the Petitos' claims against the Laundries outright. I'll be interested to see how this actually affects the case. What happens? Does it get thrown out on a motion to dismiss? Because that's the first thing I would expect the defense lawyers for the Laundries to say, is that this does not satisfy the impact rule in Florida. And hopefully we see that motion and we see a response by the Petitos' lawyer, because maybe they know something I don't, and maybe there are some facts in the case that do get it across and over this bar of the impact rule in Florida. Hopefully you guys found this interesting. If you did, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to our page. Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.